Record here. Welcome, Dr. Romie, to the Biohacker Babes. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, totally geeking out to be here with you ladies. And, not only thank you both, but I thank the listeners. Time is such a crucial element in our lives today. And if someone's giving all of us their time, I'm so grateful.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for
Absolutely.
saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for spending the next hour with us. So appreciative of
Yes.
it. Well, this is going to be a really fun conversation because I think
Yes.
Lauren and I are maybe the perfect case here for your new book, The Busy
Okay.
Brain Cure. Um,
Mm.
I think I still have a busy brain. I thought maybe I had overcome that. I thought like, oh, I had a busy brain back in high school and college, but I've overcome it. But after reading your book, I'm like, oh, I still have some work to do.
Mm.
And I did your busy brain cure or quiz, and I'm tired and wired. So
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
I'm excited to go through some of your program, but also to share this with our audience today. So I think to kick it off, if you can share your story of like what was the turning point for you from, you were practicing more traditional medicine and then you discovered this whole realm of stress management. So what was the story there?
Yeah, Renee, I am a proud daughter of immigrants and grew up in a very small town in Illinois and a public education school system. And I had a success mantra given to me from childhood. It was just what was there from all my elders, my parents especially. We have one daughter and you will become a doctor. And I think I learned from an early age this pattern of success at all costs and mission accomplished. I entered medical school and entered neurology at a time where less than 5% of the brain doctors in America were women. And I loved my job. I geek out over neuroscience. Listen, today I hear all the neuroscience on your podcast. It's sexy. Back then it was really geeky. Like I'm still really socially awkward on first dates. Um, and I not only was seeing patients as a doctor, I was doing cutting edge research on really this area had not been explored at all, the role of a woman's hormonal cycle as it affected brain health, like especially in epilepsy and migraine. And I was teaching medical students. So, girl, on the outside, like she had succeeded, designer high heel shoes and all. It was like my success was defined by the labels and the titles and the awards and the achievements. And how many people are listening right now going, check, yes, that's me. And I was really suffering. Really, it initially started with symptoms that I now call the busy brain. But girls, if I had to be like honest, I thought I was like failing at life. Like, am I the only one suffering in the room? And I kept pushing to the edge of stress. And I learned firsthand that chronic stress will cause physical disease and chronic stress can kill you. It almost killed me. And I ended up in life saving surgery back in 2010 and waking up in the hospital after surgery, kind of listening to what had been done and what the next steps were. And I realized, like, Lord, nothing I learned in medical school is going to help me now. I don't know what to do. Neither are my shoes, neither are my titles. And you fast forward to today, 2024, busy brain is really I think, societal problem that really can encapsulate some of the mental well-being and mental health crisis I see in corporate America and high functioning entrepreneurs. And I thought, if this has been an 8-year journey for me to find my cure, research it, test it in individuals, and write the book, well, then if one less person suffers and finds a path to hope, then the three of us have done our job today.
Yeah.
So admirable. I think about that all the time. It's like, what one life are you touching and making a difference?
Yes.
You're helping many, many, many lives, not just one. We know this, but
I hold that intention, Lauren, but I just, I'm going to have an entrepreneurial segue here. I think people think they have to do something at scale, and how are you measuring impact by your social media followers, or how many people buy your book, or how many people register for your course, or how many testimonials you get. You just look at the population, and if everyone helped one life today, then the world would be an epically sacred place.
yeah,
That's
well,
a
there
good
is a
point.
ripple effect that is beyond our control. So that you bring up such an interesting point, like these measures of success. in life, or at least our modern day society, that become kind of twisted. I don't know how long this has been a thing, but I'm always curious about the origin of the brain in these models of stress. Do you think that that was something that was modeled to you as a young girl? You mentioned your family, like
Yeah.
it's like you were going to be a doctor. Was it
No,
transgenerational?
no. Everyone asks me that because I proudly tell the immigrant story for this reason, for all women of diverse backgrounds. You both know this, but to get a traditionally published book deal as a female MD or PhD, it's a 500-to-1 ratio, men to women, of doing it. And then
Oh,
we,
wow.
praise God, broke the USA Today bestseller list as well, right out of the gate. And you realize, like, we're energetically, as you so eloquently said, hitting a ripple effect. But when I was being raised, and I'm just going to gather in a graceful way that I'm an elder sister to you both and a little older, we had off time for our brains. We would come home from school. I don't know about y'all, but my mama like did not need children in her hair. And we were sent outside to play with all the other neighborhood children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
And,
It's awesome.
eating processed foods, was a treat. If you got a good report card, maybe we got a Little Debbie snack cake. Did you all have Little Debbie snack cakes when you were growing up?
Yeah.
I
We
don't
didn't
really
eat them so
remember
much.
eating those.
Yeah, our
Okay.
friends ate them. Like our
Yeah.
family, our household was
Yes.
quite healthy, but it was all the
Yes.
snack cakes of the 80s and
Yes.
90s.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was all the snack cakes, but we didn't have it every day. It was a
Oh, yeah.
special treat. And
Yeah.
I was blessed. Like, I'm kind of like chuckling every time I hear, people on a podcast quoting Ayurveda. I'm like, that was my life, of what my mom and my aunties cooked. And I thought it was like I was taking stinky Indian food and my Snoopy lunchbox to school, right? But
Yeah.
like, I grew up, and so I think there was a rhythm of life when I was growing up and when we were growing up in the 80s and 90s. And neuroscience also shows this, and we'll break it down in this podcast later. But, when I started my journey in medical school and neurology in the 1990s, we did not recognize things like adult onset ADHD, which is normal now. Our brain structure and functions, all of us, are very different now because of this time that we spend on digital devices. And so I think that's part of that pattern. I would say, right? Of
Mhm.
and then I take responsibility for that attitude of success at all costs. And also, can I have like an authentic moment with you all? Like, for any
Please.
woman listening that has been the one and the only in the room, we took daggers to our spirit, right? So having spent the first part of my career being the only woman in the room and in everything in neurology, and in chapters in 5 to 9, you read about my incredible male allies and the leadership lessons I got from them. But still, I do know that anyone you talk to that's been the one and the only in the room, I do know that that was an external force that was a part of it. And that's why I say it out loud on your podcast, because whether you're a woman in corporate America or a woman entrepreneur, we know what that feels like, that barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Big time.
Powerful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm curious with the whole busy brain thing. Like, is there somewhat of like an addiction to that? Like, feeling like, I think I maybe heard, maybe it was in the book, like about people being addicted to stimulants, and like,
Yes.
I can feel that. Like, sometimes
Yeah.
I get on the train and I just go all day.
Yeah.
What's going
Because
on
it's
in the
kind of
brain
fun
there?
sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then you just
let's
start
talk
like
about the
getting
clinical
stuff done.
symptoms, and then let's geek out about the science together. And
Okay.
what I really want to start about this is there's this misnomer that I have a healthy lifestyle, or I practice everything that you all preach on your podcast and give great science about, or other integrative functional medicine practitioners. I was here in an integrative medicine clinic in Orlando before my corporate business and speaking took off. And everyone was coming with these symptoms into my clinic, and they had their hormones balanced, or they were on the correct, cleanse, or whatever you want to call it. And I was still dealing with this. So I want to create that first myth I want to break is, just because you strictly follow keto, paleo, and vegan diet, or you have an optimized exercise system, all of those are so important, but you can still be prone to busy brain. Number one. Number two, let's kind of start about what happens is we live in a society, myself included, I'm not immune, where we're seeking that next dopamine high. For a high achieving leader and entrepreneur like myself, I don't know about you all, but there's that high of, I know what my checklist is in my personal and professional life daily. I know what my quarterly KPIs are. And there's that euphoria when you hit that check marker. It's completed in Asana. Do you all feel that way?
Oh, yeah. I
Yes.
love a good to-do list and just
Yes.
crossing it off.
Right.
Renee is
And even
definitely a checklist gal. Yeah.
and sometimes I
Oh.
even cheat that if it wasn't on the checklist and I did it, I put it on there just for the joy of checking it off.
Oh, of
Right.
course.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
So there's that, but that we can put in the productivity side. The other side of it is this is we wake up and we say, I don't have maximum productivity, energy without caffeine in the morning, excessive amounts of caffeine, right? I'm not anti-caffeine. And they're going to tell you and I that it was that mushroom latte coffee, but child, there might have been like 3, 4 energy drinks mixed into that. Or now they're on, telemedicine is giving stimulant ADHD medications to adults. 85% of the prescriptions of Ritalin, Vyvanse, and all those associated drugs are consumed here in the United States. And it's not just children, it's a crisis in adults, right? So we're
Wow.
on these jacked up stimulants all day. And what happens? You go to the office or you go to your home office and you have multiple computer screens like we all do right now, open with multiple devices communicating to us. And you're trying to get through your checklist and you can't focus. You're like, let me have another little bit of sugar. Let me have another bit of caffeine or stimulant. And then there's like this low level anxiousness all day. And something that should take 3 minutes takes 37 minutes to complete. And then you pause and you're like, let me just go home. I'm going to stand on that self-care and brain shift like Dr. Romie and Renee and Lauren were discussing today. And you go home and you can't take the edge off. So you're like, let me have a glass of wine or 3. It's organic, so we're good. And if you don't drink alcohol, it's some bougie overpriced supplement that some influencer was peddling, not based on science. Or honestly, the doctor now, because they've given you a stimulant and you're on edge all day, you need a prescription sleeping pill at night, a benzodiazepine. I call that the stimulant sedative cycle. You need chemicals to push your dopamine and adrenaline all day. And now it's pushing you to an edge of mood instability, anxiety, adult onset ADHD. And then you need a sedative to sleep. And now you're over medicated. And when those alcohol or the benzodiazepines like Ambien or Restoril wear out of your system or Xanax, you're waking up and all those anxiety kind of wired and tired receptors in your brain are like, girl, feed me something now. And that's the busy brain. And in clinical terms, it's adult onset ADHD, anxiety, specifically ruminating anxiety we see in intellectual individuals, and insomnia. Those 3 symptoms make up the busy brain.
It sounds like neurotransmitter whack-a-mole. It's like, we're going to push this one down and then another one pops up.
Yes.
It's like your brain, your body doesn't even know there is no baseline, right? It doesn't know what the baseline is.
Correct. And the thing is about the tests that are out there, and there's excellent tests that are out there that you can test in urine, a certain blood test, even brain scans. Just want you to remember they're giving you a snapshot in that moment.
Yeah.
And 42 minutes later, it could be something completely different. I love your term, neurotransmitter whack-a-mole, right?
Take it.
Yes. And I'm going to quote you on it, Lauren, like neurotransmitter whack-a-mole. I love it. Yes.
I can see the graphic now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think? Because I've used those urine neurotransmitter tests in the past and I just didn't get a lot of value out of them. What do you think about something subjective like the Braverman test? Not that I'm encouraging people to diagnose themselves, but just to understand and kind of see clearly like, oh my gosh, I have to do something about this.
I knew we were going to have these conversations about the different tests that are out there, about the different neuroimaging and the different devices we can wear. And like in my Busy Brain Cure book, can I pull out the Indian auntie on you both? And I want you both to push back with your expertise and educate me and your audience as well. I like to keep things simple. I also largely, my audience is I speak for a living in Fortune 500 companies. I'm taking integrative medicine and mindfulness into corporate America. And I need to work in the traditional US insurance system if people even have insurance.
Yeah.
So my whole idea was keep it simple. And that's why
Mm.
that neuropsychology test, Renee, that you alluded to in the beginning, and we'll give you, it's free to take our busy brain test. I felt like if you can get a quantifiable score and you relate to your symptoms at the core of neurology, that's who we are. Is I want to know your symptoms. I want to do a physical exam. And then that evaluation that we do, the busy brain test as one example, is a excellent tool. So what if we just kept it simple? Because what happens when people get the, brain scans from the Amen Clinic, or they're wearing the Aura Ring, or they go through any of this testing, they're now maybe having a worse busy brain attached to the numbers or the pictures on the scans, rather than what I feel. You hear me say this over and over. The voices of my Indian aunties are wicked when you have a busy brain. Like, hi, why aren't you asking Lauren and Renee if they know a man to fix you up with, right? But when we calm ourselves down, we're in this place of hope and intuition, and we know what we need. And so I want to ask you all, like, do these tests add some extra value? You both run them and recommend them far often than I do now that I'm out of the integrative medicine clinic. Tell me what you think.
I actually kind of think no, because at the end of the day, it's like we have to do the basics, and most people are failing at the basics, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're all going to have to talk about sleeping better and having circadian aligned days. So it's like, does it really matter what's on the test? I guess it depends how symptomatic you are, what the challenges are.
Yeah, I broke down labs that we test. I think any individuals like both of yourself who know so much about biohacking, integrative functional medicine are going to be like, Dr. Romie, you're missing about another dozen tests on there. But I really started with the basics of what traditional medical insurance would cover if someone ripped out the lab slip out of chapter 16 or downloaded it from our website and went to their primary care doctor. That was like where I was coming from, thinking I can probably hit 80 to 90% of the root causes of busy brain just with this panel.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then if that comes back okay, sure, I'm going to send you to an integrative functional medicine colleague, or we've partnered with Rupa Health, which I know you both talk about often, to take some of the rest of the tests. But most people, you can get down to the core, like you said, from the basics of their behaviors and some basic labs that we know, and we'll break it down over the neuroinflammation in the brain. And I know you all are big proponents of treating the circadian rhythm, and that's where I live.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Really love that.
Yeah, I will say I guess similar to Lauren, I stopped doing the neurotransmitter testing too, because it was like at $450, and then it was still like, oh, well, you're not sleeping or you're not honoring your circadian rhythm. And it was like, did we need to spend all that money to tell you
No.
what everyone should be doing anyway? So
And rather I'd spend that money if insurance isn't covering it. And we'll talk about it on a full thyroid panel and your vitamin D3 levels. I mean, that is more bang for your buck than the urinary neurotransmitters.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think you said that you had some thyroid issues that like they didn't catch because they only did TSH.
Oh God, Renee.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the whole thing. I know, thyroid thing.
I shared this story in the book for this reason, not to talk about myself, because I wanted other women to see their story in me, that like, if I, as a doctor who was trying to advocate for myself, was having a hard time, what is happening to women in our society? You read in the top of chapter 4, one of my male colleagues going, thank God you work like a man. The last time we had a woman in the division and she got pregnant and she was out for 6 months, the division lost all this revenue, blank, blank. Little did he know I was struggling with infertility and really struggling. And remember I told you, researching women's hormones on the brain and epilepsy and thyroid. And I'm reading neuroendocrinology, some advanced neuroendocrinology about when the brain is off, you could have these thyroid symptoms. And I'm like, ooh, chunks of hair this big are falling out of my head. I have adult onset acne. I've never, ever, ever had a regular menstrual cycle in my entire life. And it would just be written off as, oh, you're stressed or whatever. And I went to the endocrinologist who happened to be male, and I'm like, could you check my entire thyroid? And they just did the TSH, T3, and T4. And they said, well, you're really normal. And I'm like, I'm not. I
Yeah,
hear all the
define
symptoms.
really normal.
Oh,
That's
and to them, this is
crazy.
now, I want everybody listening to this. This is subclinical hypothyroidism that 1 in 8 women in the United States have. And if you're a woman of color, 1 in 4 if you have melanin in your skin. And in our cultures, we're often written off as big boned or a curvy girl, right? And like in my culture, we're Punjabi, we love curves, but that doesn't mean you don't need to check for a thyroid gland issue. And
Mhm.
it wasn't until I now am on my healing journey and I find integrative medicine and I go through the hormone modules and I tell another compassionate male colleague who had done all of this, and I'm like, this is really bothering me. I've always wondered. And sure enough, they do the full panel, and I have autoimmune thyroid disease. And I get diagnosed at 39. And I want to be clear on this podcast, I did all of the holistic things with nutrition and supplements, but also am on medication. And at 39, I had my first regular menstrual cycle. And man, did my busy brain clear. Like, boom, like cognition came back. Like, I am like, superwoman. I was like, who's this? And
Wow.
if anybody listening to this podcast is going to do one thing, like, don't even buy the book. Don't do anything. Just go and demand a full thyroid panel. There's 8 labs, and if you're not sure what they are, they're in chapter 16 of the book. They're on our companion website page as well. Like, I think we could save lives with that, and I know you've had thyroid
Yeah.
experts on here before, but what's important about my angle is that men and women now, because we check the thyroid in men too, 40% of people just present with the neuropsychiatric symptoms when they have autoimmune or subclinical hypothyroid disease. That means the only symptoms they're having is, I can't focus. I have ADHD. I'm anxious. They may not have the irregular menstrual cycles, the acne, the difficulty losing weight, the hair falling out.
Yeah. Yeah. I just redid my full thyroid panel
Yeah.
and like slightly hypothyroid a couple things, but
Mhm.
I've had so many doctors write it off because like
Oh,
I'm at a normal weight, my TSH has been normal. But like I used to suffer with a lot of brain fog, dry skin. It's like some of the other
yes.
things that they're like they look at you and they're like, "Oh, you don't have a thyroid problem.
Yes, you
We're not
do.
gonna."
Yes, you do, Renee. And
Yeah.
here's why this is so important for women, because you could be in your 30s and 40s right now saying, okay, they're writing off the dry skin and the hair and issues or the weight difficulty. But as we progress, the subclinical hypothyroidism and the more we have chronic stress in a busy brain can actually turn into more serious issues in the brain, including a risk for dementia. Like, no, we need to stop this. I hope they
Yeah.
treated you. If
That's
not, like, you tell them you've got Dr. Auntie Romie that's going to pick up the phone and fuss out your primary care doctor, Renee.
I have a alternative holistic
Good.
doctor friend, yes, that I'm working with
Amazing.
now. Yeah.
Amazing. Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
is well. But
Gosh, I mean, we really have to be our own advocates and then
Yes.
create this support team.
Yeah.
Other than thyroid, like I wholly agree, we got to do the full panel. And actually, I'm just in my head thinking, I'm like, do I have all 10? TSH free in total, T3, T4, that's 5. How many antibodies? 2? Reverse
2
antibodies?
antibodies, the anti-thyroid
TBG?
peroxidase antibody, TPO.
Uh-huh.
And then of course, now I looked it up, right? Okay, hold on. I'm going to open it up in my book right now. We're going to have an
And then
auntie
I
moment
have
because I want to get it right. So your thyroid
reverse
stimulating
T3,
hormone, reverse.
TBG.
Yeah, and reverse T3 actually will tell me a little bit more about
Stress.
adrenal as
Yeah.
well. Okay, so thyroid
well,
stimulating hormone, your total T3, total T4, your free T3, your free T4, reverse 3 T3, your thyroid peroxidase antibodies, and your anti-thyroglobulin antibodies, 8 of them. Those are the ones I recommend.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great
Traditional
list.
insurance will cover. Yeah, busy brain
Yeah.
cure. And I'm on chapter
Great.
1. Page
Great.
129 is talking about your thyroid right there.
Yeah.
Take that copy
Great.
into the doctor. People think I'm
Yeah.
joking. I've had more than one reader tell me I handed my circled or bookmark book to my primary care doctor and said, keep it. And the minute the doctors turn to the back and there's like pages upon pages of references, they're like, no, keep the book. I'll get the labs. Like, literally. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Trust. There's a lot of trust
Awesome.
in there. Yeah. Oh gosh, that's so empowering. I think, yeah, we need to be running more labs, but also I think we can start with the basics.
Yes.
Before we get to your protocol, can we take like a scientific look in, like if we were to open up the skull and look in the
Yes.
brain,
Yes.
the beginning of the stress response, it turns into chronic stress. What are we seeing inside the brain?
Yeah, I want to dismantle the stress response conversation that a lot of people were having before the pandemic that I'm still hearing today, not necessarily on your podcast, but since we're sharing this, on my platform as well, I think it's important is if people are sitting here going, the stress busting tips that are out there on social media are no longer working for me, this is why. Most of those were based on the acute stress response or the Walter Cannon-Bard theory that I cover in chapter 1. That is no longer relevant. That is relevant back in the day if I had a final exam in medical school and I was cramming the night before. That's an acute stress response, right? What we're under now psychologically as a society here in the West is something known as, our mental capacity. With everything going on in the world, with the pressures we put on ourselves in the daytime, the digital, device overload, unable to disconnect is we're at mental capacity. So just think we're at a tipping point. So now the same exam that's coming up or sales report that's due, at the end of the week could push us over the edge. It's known as chronic stress, a chronic stressor that's going on in your life for weeks, months at a time that people write off as society normal. I mean, being a parent to young children under the age of 5, stressful. Caregiver to elderly parents, stressful. Me, global book tour with starting a new C-suite role as chief wellness officer at Great Wolf Resorts, chronic stress, right? So something different is actually happening in the brain that really want people to pay attention to. Neuroinflammation, a particular pattern of inflammation and elevation of interleukin 1s and other free radicals that are directly affecting our hypothalamus, the SCN nucleus, i.e. the circadian rhythm, right? This is really important because we've known as traditional neurologists, neuroscientists, that these patterns of neuroinflammation, we've been talking about it for decades, even before brain scans. These patterns of neuroinflammation we knew were there in Alzheimer's, MS that would cause the plaques or the MS lesions. But now we know just being under chronic stress will cause these same changes. They're reversible, so don't panic. And now what happens? You're inside your hypothalamus and you talk about circadian rhythm, but my friends on the Biohacker Babe podcast who are listening, it is not just about your sleep-wake cycle. It's like, I call it your airport traffic control tower of the brain. It's like the global airspace, like at an airport. I'm in Orlando. We were talking before the podcast, and it's linked to, most of the major cities in the United States and so many international destinations. If a storm comes through here and the airport traffic control tower has to temporarily shut down, flights are delayed or canceled within minutes, not only in Atlanta or Detroit, but even out to London and Dubai. That's exactly how our hypothalamus is. It's this interconnected web to every other part of our brain for cognition, for our processing of visual information, for our mood, and the rest of our body through 2 pathways: hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, all 50 hormones in your brain and body, and through the autonomic system. So respiration, digestion. So it's why if the 3 of us were under chronic stress, we all could have very different symptoms. But at the root of it is busy brain. And then you're like, wait, this old college knee injury from sports, or for me, you read it's my digestion is always off when I'm under chronic stress. So that's what's going on, and so important to know.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I can relate with the digestive issues
Oh,
when I'm
yeah.
stressed. That, and I feel like that's with chronic stress, but with acute stress, for me, it is immediate brain fog. And is
Yeah.
that the neuroinflammation
So with
causing
that,
that?
actually what I would tell you is that is what you're at capacity. This is this new model. Thank you and thank you for your honesty and sharing your symptoms, right? You're under chronic stress, you would say, because you were telling me, I think as the podcast started, you have an elevated busy brain score. So
Yeah.
now you put an acute on chronic stressor, and this is where the brain fog is coming from, the neuroinflammation, right? That
Mm.
it's different patterns. I'm I want to see your labs, but suss about your thyroid, right? That, during these acute times, our thyroid can fluctuate day to day, week to week, but also potentially what's happening with progesterone and estrogen as well in your brain under that, because it may be under
Mm,
chronic strain with chronic stress, and the acute tips it over. So that's
interesting.
one model of brain fog. The other model, if we want to go down this road, it's a little different than busy brain, but is that when our sleep cycle is disturbed, and I know you've had experts on this talking before, and you can link to those podcast episodes, is our glymphatic system is regulated by our autonomic nervous system and circadian rhythm, and it's not working. And so it's kind of, think of, if you don't drain the garbage disposal in your sink, it's going to back up, and some nasty crud comes back up in your sink that smells like. That's what's
Yeah.
happening when our glymphatic system in our brain isn't working during sleep. So I think those are two mechanisms that can individually happen or all together.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Makes a lot of
So
sense.
since our audience is fairly familiar with good sleep hygiene and setting
Yes.
circadian rhythm, the morning
Yes.
sunshine, like you start preparing for sleep before
Mm-hmm.
you wake up. But for the women that are the caregivers of not only their children, their parents, but their husbands, and working full time, and they're like,
Yes.
what gives? Like, I can't. Like, there's no end in sight. There's
Agreed.
no out.
I got it. I
Where
got
do
you.
we start?
I think there's external boundaries and internal brain shifts we want to do, right? And the one thing, we have to get rid of, again, I share the story of me wanting to collect shoes and titles and awards. I feel like in today's world, that's like collecting accolades on TikTok and Instagram, that I am the mother who's doing it all. I have a corporate job and I've got this successful side hustle on the side, like whatever it is we're showing to people. That's the external boundary that, like, sisters, I hope you find some quiet time. Even if it's 5 minutes running away from your kids and shutting yourself in the pantry and breathing and really looking within of
Mhm.
what can I get rid of in my life that isn't serving me? And I can do it with a kind boundary. So I'm not going to piss off a neighbor and say, I can't come to this weekly, bunko game, whatever it may be. Right.
Mhm.
I think that's one, is doing an external audit of what is sucking your boundaries in your life that can be delegated. We three talk about that all the time. I can't do what I do without a team delegating it all out.
Mhm.
Internally, the brain shifts. Yeah. So week 1 through 4, we talk about everything that's needed to reset the circadian rhythm that you all talk about all the time. Um, I think the one thing could I add in there, and you can tell me if it's in your protocol, that I give to even, women who may be sleep challenged, is the importance of 5-HTP, 5-hydroxytryptophan.
Mm.
Mm.
That is in all the supplements that are out there that we have to learn in integrated medicine, and all the stuff that's out on the market that people bring to me or send me DMs on Instagram. Should I be taking this, Auntie? Um, I really, when I researched this and said, how could we get instant relief? It's low dose 5-HTP, 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is a natural precursor of serotonin in your body, and then can break down into melatonin. Do not take melatonin unless it's, jet lag and it's just for a few days. But really, we have found that that was one of the most impactful things for the restoration of circadian rhythm, along with the magnesium glycinate. So I did want to add that part in there, along with all the habits that you all discuss. The next
Yeah.
section, chapters 5 through 8, let's break down those brain shifts, because they can be transformative in the energy. And once again, I'm going to be controversial for our community, but let's break those down from food and labs. Where do you want to start?
Food.
Okay.
Yeah. Food.
I'm
Yeah.
going to start with this. What is both of your favorite comfort food?
Comfort food.
What's
A burger and fries.
a burger and fries, Lauren? Okay. And how about you, Renee?
Some kind of stuffed pasta, like a tortellini or a ravioli.
Okay.
Is like the ultimate treat.
Yes. For me, I call it I'm the triple carb threat. Basmati rice with potato curry and naan bread, like 3 carbs for dinner. You could even make it and I'd have it for breakfast,
Triple threat. I love it.
That's how I feel about like tortellini ravioli. I could eat
Yes.
it any time of day.
Yes.
Oh, so good.
So the first thing I want people to do is honor and have comfort food at least once to twice a week.
Love it.
Because one of the most traumatic things we're doing as a society, especially women, is these cleanses and monitoring our foods and our macros. It's actually raising our stress hormones in our brain and making a busy brain worse, and actually creating trauma tracks around my love of basmati rice and potato curry, or your love of burgers, Lauren, right? Or the ancestry. Think about this: the ancestry around Italian food and tortellini or Indian food that comes. Most of the Western diet plans don't honor our ancestors, our foods of a country of origin, a food tied to a religious holiday. Like, Lord, it's your child's birthday this weekend. Have the cupcake and the ice cream. Don't be in the corner making a face going, ooh, I can't do this. My CGM is going to go off and it has gluten in it. Because now your child is also feeling your energy that they've done something wrong having a birthday with a cupcake. Be in joy. But the biohack that I gave in this book that I feel really proud that we researched was, you choose one thing, all the other meals. You either have caffeine or you have a high glycemic carbohydrate, one or the other, in the hour before and after. And the reason being, and we can first tell me what you think of that, and then we can break down the science of why that's important. What are you all thinking?
Compromising it or picking one stimulant. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pick one
Definitely.
or the other and have comfort food. And why is it? Most people we meet that have busy brain are going to pick the caffeine all day long. And for most
I
people,
love caffeine.
Same. And for most people, caffeine is pretty healthy. There's very few people that I limit their caffeine. You know, when you do the first 4 weeks of the brain shift, everything you all preach about circadian rhythm, but we ask everybody to start with the first 4 weeks to restore, so that you don't need excessive amounts of caffeine to cope with sleep deprivation, right? But for most people, unless I'm dealing with someone that's having severe anxiety, panic attacks, I'm good with caffeine, right? So have the caffeine, or listen, basmati rice and potato curries, high glycemic. The bun on the burger and fries, high glycemic. Tortellini, high glycemic. Okay. Then no caffeine for an hour before, after that. And that's it. And by the time we were done with the 8-week protocol, because we ran this in over 1,000 executives virtually in different companies, people had reduction in belly bloating and brain bloating. They literally were one dress or pant size smaller and energetic all day, just by picking that one or the other.
And what's happening there? Is it
Very cool.
the
So,
glucose and insulin or stress response? What's
when we talk about insulin and our insulin receptors, everyone, as you rightfully should, thinks about the pancreas and type 2 diabetes. There's also something known as type 3 diabetes, where your pancreas is fine, but the insulin receptors in your brain, untreated, and these blood spikes in sugar over time can be a very, very important risk factor for dementia, Alzheimer's dementia. But you backtrack a little bit. These insulin receptors in the brain, when you're stimulating them with caffeine, fine. Excessive amounts of caffeine, like we discussed at the beginning, now you're actually tripping the wire for, a dopamine adenosine deficiency that's actually making it more harder to focus. You add sugar on top of that, and now it's like you added gas to like a forest fire, because now the insulin receptor is stressed with the sugar, a high sugar response, and now with the caffeine. And that actually feeds into difficulty focusing. You may get this false high initially if you, chug a latte that has sugar in it, or eat a bagel or whatever with it, but pick one or the other. And most people will pick caffeine. But again, I'm not against high glycemic carbs every now and then, really, because when you cure your busy brain, those cravings stop. And you're really being mindful again to say, hey, I'm having this food because I'm with my extended family, and just having this potato curry and naan is like making me happy, or it's a child's birthday, so schedule it once to twice a week. So that's really the simple theory behind it. And then it allows for cultural foods from around the world and inclusivity. And, I live in a world, I'm a chief wellness officer. I want the paleos and the vegans and the carb lovers to be able to sit at one table.
Yes. So good.
I love that.
No, we need to enjoy eating again. I think so much of us feel like it's just for survival, and we don't give it time or joy or gratitude. It's such a great point.
This, or when we're do you all have this? Because, you all are public figures, and someone is out eating with you. They're eating out with me and they're looking at my plate. Like, oh, wait,
What's she doing over
she
there?
put rice
Yeah.
on her plate. Can I put rice on my plate, or is she going to judge me? Or wait, I thought she
Yeah.
was vegetarian and she put chicken on her plate. Ooh, right? Like this judgment.
I always hear, don't look at my plate.
Yes.
I know, I
Why?
do too. I don't like
I
that.
don't
I'm
like
like,
And
that.
I'm
I
not
I
know.
judging
hate that.
anybody.
Yeah. And so
No
I always
judgment.
invite people to like when we're ordering on a menu or we're sitting at someone's home, I'm like, my intention is everybody sit and eat, enjoy, and focus on talking to each other and not what's on each other's plates. Like I
Yeah.
honor what's on
Yeah.
your plate if you'll honor what's on mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I was
so
at
much content.
I had to go to a sports bar last week for my husband had a work event, and
Uh-huh.
the food options were not great,
Yes.
and I'm talking to the server and I'm like, "Do you have any kind of like veggie platters or like any kind of vegetables?" And she's like, "Oh, are you vegan?" And I was like, I thought that was a strange question. I was like, "Oh, no, I'm going to eat like the burger and the meat and stuff. I'm just asking if there's like additional
Yes.
vegetables." They
Yes.
had a salad. That was the best they could do, but I thought that
Isn't
was
that
funny
interesting?
that vegan.
Yeah. Yeah. That's their response, the wait staff. And then there's like you heard kind of like the disappointment, like, oh, I gotta go tell a chef we've got a vegan in the house or someone that
Yeah.
wants gluten free, right? And there's so much
Yeah.
judgment around this. And this is this
Yeah.
toxic diet culture. And by the way, if you all think this is crazy, so I was the closing keynote last year at the American Counseling Association. So it's all licensed psychotherapists. And I discuss this in detail about the lack of inclusion, diversity, equity, problems in the diet culture, and the trauma and the stress that's caused. This is the only time I got a standing ovation in the middle of my keynote. I had to stop about ending the diet culture that has been propagated in the West. Yes.
That's
Like
Yeah.
amazing.
Wow.
Ah,
this, so biohacker babes, like do this one thing, but could I add the next food thing on it too?
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
Let's
And
go.
I wanted some of your all's input because I'm not as creative as y'all are. But the second one, you all are not surprised, but I need to highlight, double click on this like a nagging auntie for your brain. Put healthy fat 1 to 2 servings with every single meal or snack you have, even if it is dumping extra olive oil on my rice and potato curry, on your burger, and on your, pasta. Like, don't make it complicated. Just find something in your pantry and add it. Like, that literally nuts, hummus, avocado oil, avocados, whatever it is, that is just key. And they hear us saying it, and then they go and they eat something and they're just getting that vegetable platter again with nothing else.
Mm,
Yeah. I
yeah,
know.
I love
That
that.
one is really hard to dismantle for people. I still have clients
Yes.
all the time. I'm eating too much fat. I'm like,
No,
really?
no, no,
Let's look.
no.
Yeah.
But can I tell you how I get around it? People are like, how are you handling everything that's going on in your life right now? And I'm like, I'm doing the best of my ability to follow the brain shifts or biohacks, as you call them, in weeks 5 and 6. And don't combine caffeine and sugar, and then a healthy fat at every meal. And then, like, they see my skin in person. And I'm 49, I'm turning 50 this year. And I'm like, no, even I came off a red eye flag, girl. This is like eating the healthy fat. So I feel like if there's like this vanity factor thing to it, or that I'm coping with all
Yeah.
that's on my plate right now, maybe that helps people. Like, I don't know how we dismantle it. Like, if you all have theories or suggestions, please give them to me because I need them for my people too.
Oh,
I think
yeah,
you're
you
doing
just see
great.
giant
You're doing great.
billboards on the highways, like fat makes you beautiful.
Yes, I love that.
Yes.
Yes, healthy fats are not the enemy. Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
I
besties
know.
with your brain. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Besties with your
I eat a
brain.
lot of fat. A lot of fat.
Yeah.
Totally. I'm
Okay, so
still like reeling over this caffeine and sugar thing. I mean, it really is a problem. All
okay.
these cafes, coffee shops, Dunkin' Donuts,
Yes.
Starbucks that are just propagating this. They're just making us die slowly. It's like just
Right. Well,
so
and
upsetting.
but if we just say that, then it means we need to give people the options of how to make it sugar free. Going through the drive-through at Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, and you've got to be careful with even the agave syrup, and
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
careful with the honey. So I don't consider honey a high glycemic food when it's consumed correctly from the Ayurvedic protocol. And in the Ayurvedic protocols is
Mm.
you take raw honey And you either eat it with a spoon or you eat it with cold foods. Once you eat heat honey, like in hot tea or coffee, it's losing some of its medicinal value.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
I pay a lot of extra money for raw honey.
Yeah, yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to then throw it in a hot tea
Yes,
and just destroy
yes,
what I just paid for.
Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so no honey. What about like a monk fruit or
I
stevia?
do the monk fruit or the stevia is fine. Or if you're
Okay.
getting just the natural sugars that's in the oat milk, fine, right? But just really, if we could just
Yeah.
get people to stop with all the extra flavorings that are at Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks or Pete's Coffee, whatever coast y'all are on, because I want to honor California and Pete's Coffee, Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it is crazy. Like sometimes I'll look on like if I when I'm traveling, I like to get Starbucks because it's like easy in
Yes.
airports and stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll look at like a grande latte and it'll be like includes 4 pumps of syrup. If you had like a flavored latte. I don't order them. I just like to play around and see
Yeah.
what's in there. And it's like 350 calories. And you know it's
Girl,
just coming from the
right?
sugar.
Well, and same, like, I love Starbucks too, being in airports or traveling everywhere, you can always get it. I was floored at how much added sugar they put in the matcha.
Oh, I
Oh yeah,
bet.
it's
God.
terrible. I've
Yeah.
reduced it to the lowest dose they could possibly scoop in there, and
Yeah.
watching my CGM, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
how does half a scoop spike me this high? And I feel terrible. It's not just about the number. I
Mm-mm.
feel really bad,
Yeah, you
honestly.
feel bad compared to when you make your own matcha latte at home or you go to a
Yeah,
proper,
night and day.
East
Yeah.
Asian, store or restaurant where they're making it and there isn't this added extra sugar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
people can't handle like the earthy taste of matcha. I think like the
Yes.
average
Yeah.
person. So they're like, we'll
Yes.
just dump sugar on and everyone will love it.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
don't drink
It's a
matcha.
good point. Yeah. It's a good point. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
Okay. So
mentioned labs briefly. Was there more
Yes.
in the lab
Yes.
category?
Yes.
oh
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And I want to make it easy, but please, you both add on anything you feel strongly about. Remember, I said I need to keep it easy. So if you tear out the lab slip or print it off the website, you can take it straight to a primary care doctor. And if you're blessed to have health insurance in America, it will be covered. So in addition to the full thyroid panel, we do check fasting insulin, hemoglobin A1C, and glucose levels, because not only is it important for everything you all discussed for longevity, but it is an important marker for me for neuroinflammation in the brain. And
Mhm.
we see even in 8 weeks, people's hemoglobin A1C and a fasting blood glucose level shift, even though it's a typical 120-day cycle. So that's one thing that's really important to know. The third thing we talked on was 25 hydroxy vitamin D levels. So checking your vitamin D levels. It's, when we run our virtual 8-week programs for corporate clients or the public, like both of you, I have an entire team. None of them are medical. They're all my tech, graphic design people that are on. They can identify correctly now, based on the complaints people are putting on their chat and Busy Brain Score, who actually has a low vitamin D3 level.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
It has become life-saving. And these are so simple. You're like, girl, this is so next level basic, Dr. Romie, really? But no, we want to bring it back down to the basics. The last thing is, if on the Busy Brain Score, you tend towards the difficulty focusing attention span side, even, for my sleep deprived mamas and caregivers that are out there, I really do want you to check just for the MTHFR
Yeah.
gene, just that, and getting on methyl assist, right? Not to mention it's so great for hormonal health and reduces cardiovascular dementia risk factors, just to, check for methylation disorders. Honestly, that is as simple as I want to keep it. Of course, in the rest of the screen, you're going to see screening for autoimmune disease and other things but again, they're basic labs that every traditional insurance will cover. They won't cover it if you're like, I read this book, can you check the labs? But they'll cover it if you say, hey, I'm chronically stressed out. I'm tired. I'm in brain fog. I can't focus. I have anxiety. Before you put me on, an ADHD medication, could you check these labs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So many other opportunities to optimize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Thank
I
you.
recently experienced that with a traditional doctor. I wanted my insurance to cover some labs because I always
Yes.
pay cash for my labs. But
Yeah.
so I was like, well, I'm really tired. He was like, oh, you are? Insurance will cover all of these. I'm like,
Yes.
great.
Brain fog, tired. And I think
Brain fog
sometimes,
tired.
like
Yeah.
you said it earlier in the podcast, Lauren, we have to know how to advocate for ourselves. And so, just going in and saying, like, you are my doctor. I am asking you for this. I am having these symptoms. And we need to, as a society, and the three of us, stop this shaming of, you're just a tired mom. You must be in perimenopause, menopause, deal with it. No, check my labs because we can do something about this. I want you to be a thriving mom. I want you to, reach career highs in the middle of perimenopause and menopause. Like, go sisters, do it. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's possible. So possible. Yeah.
Love
I'm
that.
such a fan of the lab testing, big time. So much we
Yeah.
can glean from blood chemistry. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We want to respect your time. So, and luckily there's a book that everyone can get. So this is not the end. There's so much more they get to learn from you. Well, can you tell our audience where they can find more of you and how to get the book and how to do the quiz?
Oh, thank you, everyone. We'll give a link here, the Busy Brain Test. I'm Dr. Romie, Romie. So if you go to drromie.com, the test is there for free. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, all the places. But I get to say this with grace and honor as a woman that broke the barriers, is you can find the national USA Today, Amazon, Audible best-selling book, The Busy Brain Cure, globally,
Yay!
where books are found in 7 other languages as well. And
Amazing.
Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all the places. Take a copy to your primary care doctor. 1, they probably have a busy brain and they need it. 2, it'll help them understand why you need these labs. And I'll end with this thought of, I remember being in the surgeon's office, like literally feeling like anything and everything had worked for in my life was over and didn't matter. And I want to tell you what I wish someone had said to me. My sisters, your brain is not broken. Your mind is not a mess, and hope did not depart your soul. Let's just cure your busy brain.
Thank you for sharing that.
So good.
We are not broken. I think that so many of us say stuff like that to our bodies, that we're broken.
Or like, I'm a mess, or this is just how I am. There's just how it's gonna be. Thank you for that hope.
So it is.
Wonderful.
Oh, what a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much. Any final tip that you would like to leave with our audience, something that they should do today to help their busy brain?
Go rate this podcast, give it 5 stars, and share it with your bestie, and go have comfort food together, and don't be judgy wudgy auntie on each other's plates. Yes.
That's a first for that piece of advice. I love you so much. So good. Incredible.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom and your heart and all the things with us today. You're incredible.
Likewise. Right back at you, sisters. Right back at you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks to everyone that tuned in. We will see you next time.